You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 46, When Players Leave the Table. Today we talk about players leaving the gaming table. We discuss what not to do in these situations, so not to implant bad impressions on other players at your table. We give several suggestions on how to handle players leaving the table, and give a call to action for players as well. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person across from me, just as he is a gracious host, he is also gracious when you leave, Jared.
Hey, everybody.
How you doing today, Jared?
Not bad. You?
I'm doing great. Can't
I'm
complain.
shocked about the weather.
Yeah, I mean, it was gorgeous, like, the last couple of days. I mean, it was, like...
I came from
by
DC.
the way, someone told the world that it's winter again.
No, like, I came from DC. I was, like, wearing jackets and sweatshirts underneath the jacket. Like, it's cold.
Mm-hmm.
I got off the plane, and I was sweating. I was like, holy crap, it is hot here. Or, well, it was warm.
Jared's at least not having to join me remotely from DC right now because he's only spending 4 of his 7 days in DC.
4 of 7 days in our nation's capital. God, it needs to end. But fixing problems, I don't know. Everything has to be fixed with boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground. That's the motto of your company.
It is. It really is. Like, if it needs to be fixed, you need boots on the ground.
Specifically, Jared's boots on the ground.
My boots. What does Jared do for our company? I don't know. Firefighter? That's his title, firefighter.
Things just seem to work better when Jared's there.
That was the reason they sent me to one place. Literally, I asked, I'm like, so what's my objective going there? And they're like, things just kind of work better when you're around. I'm like, oh my God. I am not. You can't rub my head for good luck. Like, you just can't do that.
Jared's the smiling Buddha now. So.
I am the smiling Buddha. I was like, you guys are out of your minds. I mean, like, while I was there, stuff did run smoothly. I mean, it did. But that's because, like, I'm just like, hey, guys, this is a problem. Hey, guys, that's a problem. That's it. I'm emailing everybody. Like, pull the fire alarm. So, yeah.
But you're probably asking to yourself, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about?
Well, so Gary had sent us 2 subjects. One of them was about how to manage. One was about how to improve his side encounters, which we did last week.
Right.
And this week we are going to help answer the other question and talk about it here in this subject, which is how to handle when a player leaves the table or leaves the game. So, and even if it's an amicable parting, the player's just busy, life comes up. How do you handle removing the player from a situation? Like, let's say you were in a combat or something like that. He had a lot of questions about. He just has more players that tend to come and go from the table.
And you know what? That's becoming a more common problem with the digitalization, I think. Of role playing, tabletop role playing, with groups like Roll20 and Dungeon Fog and all the other online tabletops that are now available. We are seeing more people.
Well, because a lot more people do pickup groups,
right? They're joining these pickup groups. Like on Roll20, you can just be like, my game's open. I need players. Mm-hmm. I'm looking for 8 players who want to play a Cthulhu game. And for me, I think it's really awesome. I really do think that's a fantastic tool because I remember back in the day when I was LARPing, there was one gentleman who drove like 3 hours to come to LARP. 3 hours. And would drive home 3 hours after LARP. So he didn't get home until like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, you do this every weekend? He's like, yeah, because there's nobody who games where I am. There's not a single person. And with the new wave of these platforms, you literally can be like, oh, I don't know anybody who games in my area, but if your friends that you started with have moved, join online. If you find yourself you've moved and don't have any groups or can't find any groups, we've talked about that, like go to visit your local comic shop, go visit your local gaming store to really find where these groups are. But just be able to, with a click of a button, be like, hey, I'm looking for 8 players. And it builds those friendships and those bonds with something very simple. But back to the point. Totally off topic. But back to the point when it is becoming more common that, a player's life interruptions, they simply shut down and they move on because they don't have the bonds of years. There isn't also the physical friendship, like, dude, I'm not going to see you anymore on Tuesdays at, I don't know, Denny's, something like that. Am I not going to see you anymore? And it's like, no, you'll still see me at Denny's, but I just can't do game anymore because I've got X, Y, and Z, whatever. So the first thing that I want to start off with dealing with players who are leaving the table is what not to do. I know typically we focus on the positives. We focus on do this, do this, do this. And we are going to get to that. But the first two things lead into why we do the positive effects. So the first one is, do not just ex-nay the character in such a way that is demeaning to the person. And trust me, I've seen every last one of these. He dies by 100 waffles with arms come up and beat him to death, and then they spit on his corpse, and then they burn his body, and then they urinate on the corpse and stuff like that. And just a horrible death. And typically it was when a player was like, there was a blow up between them and the storyteller, and they left slamming a door. I'm never coming back here. Boom. And they gave him like a week off. And then 1 week turned to 2 to 3. And then suddenly he was like, well, yeah, he just died by the waffles. They came in and they just beat him to death with their sticks and did all these horrible things to his corpse. The next one is just vanishing them. They vanish into thin air. Don't do that. Don't do that. Trust me, I'm going to get into why. Because it's very common. It's an easy way out. It's very simple, like, this person doesn't exist anymore. So the reason that I focus on these two things, the just vanishing and the don't degrade the person with however you're going to escape them, is because your other players are watching. Your other players are still in the room. And, you've got Timmy, Tommy, and Tiny, I guess. I don't know. 3 T names. I don't know who's named Tiny, but still. Tony. Timmy, Tommy, and Tony. You got Timmy, Tommy, and Tony. And, Tommy leaves, whether or not it's a fight, whether or not it's a disagreement, whether or not it's work schedule changed, and for the next year he's going to be traveling back and forth to Washington, D.C. or India. I don't know. Timmy and Tony are still there. They're still watching how you're going to handle this situation. And it is human nature. It just simply is that when you do something to one player, it's going to happen to me. Will that happen to me? So if you're like, oh, Tommy left with a fight, and you're like, well, all these horrible things happened to him, and I just rant in my anger about what awful things happened to his character. That's the other players are like, oh man, when I leave, that's gonna happen to my character, and players are attached to their characters too.
Don't play the side of this where if somebody leaves, especially in a bad situation, don't take your anger out on that player.
No.
Things just didn't work out between the two of you. Again, we've talked about this in other things when like you have disagreements when players don't fit into your game.
Yeah.
When a player doesn't agree with you and it results in the blow up that results in them ultimately leaving the table. Not you asking them to leave, but them saying, screw this is a terrible game, I'm out of here. You know, that is a slight against you as a GM, but at the same time, you have to rise above it because, just like Jared said, the rest of your players see how you react to that and think, is he going to do that to me? Am I next? You know, did he treat this? They start looking at how you interacted with that person. Did they treat you bad? You know, will they start treating me bad now that we don't have, you know, Tony here anymore? Tommy was the one who had the schedule. Tommy had the change here, and he blew up here, and then that happened. So, you know, it is a really good point that you don't want to handle this in a bad way. You don't want to take your anger out on that person in game because, you know, if you want to take your anger out on him and you want to have it out with him, call him.
Get on the phone. Get into a good verbal argument.
Get into a good verbal argument with him. Don't take it out on his character.
Don't take it out on his character. Don't take it out in front of your group. It's just like any other fight. What are you making it a spectator sport? Come on. We handle things like adults. You know what I mean? And adults, sometimes they don't get along and sometimes it's time to say goodbye. But when you're an adult, it's sayonara. See you later. It was a pleasure working with you. You know? And it's goodbye. Children are the ones like, you're all blah, 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 blah. I've been waiting to tell him off. Oh, my God. No, be an adult about this. So you have to, I guess the first step is suppress that initial emotion because there could be sadness. A player left my table. I'm sad. You know, it was my friend. And now they're saying goodbye. And so there's sadness sometimes. Sometimes there's anger. Sometimes there's resentment. There's multiple feelings and emotions you might have to a player leaving a table. You know, and the first thing you need to do is realize you're having an emotional reaction. And when you get a hold of yourself, once you are calm and clear of the emotional reaction, that's really when you can start creating. Going back to, okay, how am I going to handle this situation? Because you don't want to handle it in the moment. In that moment of, oh my God, I'm so mad or I'm so sad or whatever. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to make sure, whatever you happen with the character, I've seen a lot of storytellers just go, they died. I saw it literally after a blow up. They're dead. You know, the Waffles came and beat them up and some other very derogatory things. And then it was like that 3 weeks passed by. And then he was like, he's dead and blah, blah, blah. And like 2 months later, the guy came back and was like, so what happened to my character?
He's dead.
Well, no, it got back to him that he got beaten to death by all these horrible things happened to his character. And it just reflamed the fire, you know, and it was terrible. And it was awkward because I was just one of the party, you know, like it wasn't between me and this other person. It was between them. But like, it's awkward when you're sitting in that guy's dining room and you know, oh, well, you know, and they're throwing jabs at each other verbally. Like, well, my character could once again get, you know, beaten up by Waffles and his grave urinated on. Mm-hmm. And then the storyteller just fired right. I was like, oh my God, it's like an awkward dinner party. Like, you know, so really what you need to do, I don't recommend the death. I recommend the absence, the somehow the person left. Death is a thing if you know, like that person, but even when they're moving away now with these digital mediums, you know?
Yeah, because they can come back, obviously.
Exactly.
To your game. So, I mean, you never want to, unless maybe if they're going to part from you and they talk to you and they're like, hey, listen, I don't know if I'm going to come back. Like, you know, especially, so you're in a digital medium, and maybe Gary, I'm not, your email, it wasn't 100% clear how the people are kind of joining your games, but it sounds like you've got more of a pickup group that kind of
that's what I interpreted.
Here. Yeah. So, I mean, when somebody, I'm going to make a call to players here as well when this happens. When you decide to join a game, you know, go back to our episode on when bringing new players into your game in the middle of your game. The reason why is because, we talk about having that kind of session 0 for that player and how that works, and how you fit them into the group and how you bring them into the group. Well, if they're going to have that session 0 with you on a pickup game, something that you're doing where you've got a couple of players at your table, you have a little bit of responsibility as a player to say, I'm going to commit to showing up to this game at least a couple of times. If I know I'm not going to, if this is just something I'm trying out, I need to let the GM know, like, listen, I'm just trying this out. I may only be here for a couple of sessions. If I don't like the feel of the game, if I don't like how the game's going to work, and you can probably establish that in that session 0, so you maybe know, like, hey, the next dungeon I'm going to do, like, it's going to take maybe 2 or 3 sessions. Like, could you maybe just stick around through the 2 or 3 sessions, gut it out through one more session if you can't get through it, and then I've got a place to leave you, because then it's easy to pick up, like, hey, we need to do this dungeon. It's got a bunch of beasts in it. We need to pick up a ranger who knows how to handle these beasts.
Yep.
Like. Boom, this guy's here. He's now part of your group. You've given him purpose to be there. And when he leaves the dungeon, let's say he doesn't like your game. Let's say he doesn't like how you GM or whatever. Schedule doesn't work out for him. Whatever it may be. And he says, hey, I'm not going to be able to stick around after that. At least you finished the dungeon, and he can go on his way. The same way that he came to your group, he can leave the group because the group was like, we got the ranger to handle the beasts.
Yep. Duh. And he went his merry way, and we went our merry way in the end. So, one of the things with death, if you are going to use death, they're permanently leaving the group, or they've expressed like, okay, I'm just not coming back. It wasn't for me. Or even if it was, permanency. When you are going to utilize death, because death is a thing, it happens in games. And like I said, I typically cheat to avoid it unless you earned it. Unless you've earned that death, I typically cheat on behalf of the player.
Unless you earn the merit badge, sure, it's not going to kill you.
Probably not going to kill you. You stick your head up while, fully automatic weapon is going off directly at you. Yeah. That's your life, buddy. I'm assuming you committed character suicide.
You make a bad plan to go meet with a mobster in a closed room with no exits.
Oh, yeah. I might kill you. I think that happened.
That almost happened to us.
Brian's quick thinking really saved the party there.
Thank God Brian was a con artist.
Oh, thank God. Because literally, for our listeners, their only way out, they willingly got disarmed by the mobster. And then the mobster was essentially like, well, I'm going to chop you up now and kill you. Chop you up and kill you. Like, that's not going to happen in the process. Excuse me. Allergies. For all of our allergy listening, I suffer with you. We are one. United. Okay. But, so really thankfully, Brian made a very successful social role and essentially got this mobster to believe that they had some sort of satanic powers, that they could shoot beams out of their hands and stuff, and it
saved our ass.
It did, because I was going to clip y'all. I was like,
this is off topic, but this is how we would have died in this.
Oh yeah, that's how you would have died. So if you're going to use a death, my recommend is that the death is meaningful. Okay, meaningful to story, meaningful to players. So, when I was thinking about this answer, for Gary, one of the things that kept coming into my mind is, I've done a lot of sci-fi games, very Firefly-ish, not exactly the world of Firefly, but similar. The engine was supposed to be this like living part of the ship. You know what I mean? It was supposed to be almost an NPC because it would live and die and the ship, the storyteller very successfully made it almost an NPC. But had you want to show that sometimes the life of the engineer is a dangerous one, make sure the death is meaningful. Their arm gets caught or the ship powers down for some odd reason. You go back in the room and the engineer's missing an arm, has bled out, apparently, and, make it a scene and make it with meaning. And then that engine is just turning with the arm still stuck in it. That's how you turn an NPC ship from hero to villain. It killed one of your players, and it's just turning slowly. It almost growls as you walk in. Set that scene, and that's, oh my God, is our ship evil? Is it possessed? It will get your players thinking.
Yeah, you use the death to forward your story.
Precisely.
It's the same way, like, if you're going to lose the player, use their parting as a way to forward your story. It doesn't have to be that the player's just like, see you later.
It doesn't have to be. It can be used as a jumping point for something, for a scene or for a feeling, a mood, a change in theme. It can be so useful even when it's not death. You make it meaningful to the story. You make it a part of that story.
Also, if you keep the player alive, let's say that for some reason, a month or two from now, the player's schedule starts to work out. They go, hey, Gary, I want to join back up with the game. Cool. Here's your character. And I've been meaning to get these players some information. You can come back.
You can come back.
That information.
Boom.
You can be the hero. Hand. Boom. I've got the documents. The documents that prove the king is corrupt. Boom.
Throw it down. Throw it down on the ground. So it would in making that meaningful, and especially without focusing on player death, player walking away, should your player come back, they have a welcomed back feeling. My player didn't die. His leaving was meaningful, and I can come back to the same character he didn't die, so I can come back to the same character. Yes. So really, focus on those two things. Don't try to avoid the death, and try to make whatever it is, the leaving, the parting, whether death or life, be meaningful. And the next one is make it, I guess this is kind of my formula, is make it a moment. So not only meaningful, but make it a moment. Doing character death or character parting is difficult. Dealing with any of those. The nice thing is when you're dealing with a player who's leaving, you don't have to worry about their emotional state upon hearing this. But there's a reason that you want to make it a moment. Here's the thing, and it comes back to Timmy, Tommy, and Tony. When Tony and Timmy, after Tommy leaves and notices that you made, the player died, they died with meaning, and you made it a moment. You made sure music, there was narration, there was almost that eulogy moment to the character. Oh, if I ever leave, if I ever get sucked up in something, my parting will still have a moment. Because most players aren't leaving, the majority of players aren't leaving because there was some blow up or whatever. It's typically schedule. It's life gets in the way. We all have jobs, girlfriends, wives, we all have, husbands and boyfriends, because I don't want to exclude anyone.
Everyone has something.
Everyone has something. And really that's a lot of the reasons that people leave. So when, Tony has to go because his job is sending him out for 3 months to whatever, or, hey guys, I can't make it to game for the next year. There's not the wonder of like, am I going to get, waffles and urinated on because my storyteller's mad at me because they watched how you handled the situation. So the caveat to all this is that it has to be timely. So, you might be tempted to be like, oh, I'm going to put this in the background and then I'm going to sit and think on it. You do have to move swiftly. You've got essentially 7 days if you do a weekly game, or 14 if you do bi-weekly. You have until next session to decide how that character is going to end. And it's going to put a little bit more stress on you. And again, your emotions are going to boil on that. Trust me, they will. You're going to be like, man, this guy leaving, making me work 2 more hours on this game figuring out what the hell to do with him. Put those emotions down, breathe it out, and give the parting a respect. That's what it comes down to, is the parting must be respected. Because there are people watching you. And I think I've said that like 14 times. But
it's a really good point. You're trying to drive home the point of that there are people watching you. I know what you're trying to say there, which is that your table knows. Okay, your table won't forget how you handle the parting of that player. Now it's really, really challenging. Like, let's say that you had a player at your table, and you even if you don't have, like I said, this is why it's kind of a call to players as well. If you weren't willing to commit 3 sessions and they're in the middle of a dungeon, like, it's even harder then to get yourself part of the parting. So you get to make a choice there as the DM, whether or not you want to play him as an NPC through the rest of the combat.
That's a doable thing.
Okay. And get them out of the dungeon so you can have him part ways. And again, you don't have to give them a great parting at that point, because people know if the player isn't there to play him the last night and you're playing him, they know that they're going to do it. They just know that person, the adventurer they invited into their party, if you're playing D&D, they joined you to complete the goal of that dungeon. And then they said, peace,
adios.
I'm out. Like the wandering bounty hunter, the wandering blade for hire moves on to his next.
And it's, when you get to the end of the dungeon, it's fantastic if you can get that player to stay or NPC him till the end. But when you're playing that NPC, just remember what we've always spoken about. The NPC can't take the center stage. It's got to be your players. So use them as much as you need, but be sparing. Because your players need to be in the spotlight, not the NPC.
And you could do really cool things with that. If you were in the middle of a combat, let's say that he does take an arrow that's a fatal wound. Okay, so now you can give your players a moment to try and take him out of the dungeon, get him out.
There we go.
He dies.
Yes, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The moment you're going to have that deciding point. Okay, I've got 5 days. Do I pull them all out of the dungeon? Oh, isn't that a great story? The ranger that they hired, catches a fatal wound. We can either move on, or we can try to get him help by moving him out of the dungeon, going back the way we came. Or does he catch that arrow, and do we have to take a body with us? One of the best books I ever read was The Things We Carried, which is essentially a tryst on the Vietnam War and on all the emotional burdens and sometimes the physical burdens that our soldiers experienced during that war. But when you go poundage, it's having that body maybe having to be taken with them. Because do you just leave it there in the middle of a stone cold? Inspire your players, guide your players, make it a moment.
I mean, it could be a critical wound where the ranger is, totally hampering the party now. Everybody's trying to now keep the ranger alive. Well, in the middle of the fight with the kobolds that have wounded him severely. So now you've got players running up and they're taking on the kobold, trying to get him away, trying to engage with them, trying to protect him as he's bleeding out there, and your cleric is trying his best and doing what he can do. I mean, but
dang those poison arrows!
Every time, a poison arrow, or he just keeps getting peppered with them because they know he's down. They're working on him. Okay, make it epic around the other players. The players are saving this now, who has become an NPC in this situation. They are now revolving around him. Your story has kind of come to this little mini story that you've been able to build up to be able to make something epic out of this combat.
And that's the thing, and it's respecting the parting, and if that player comes back, they've got the story of, oh, well, we defended your character. He got hit with a couple of poison arrows. We defended him, but and we tried to get him out of the dungeon, but it was too late. And we we sang a dirge, and it was a rainy day. And honestly, it's the human when I come back and I found out, well, yeah, you took out my character or my character died, but I got a dirge on a rainy day. How cool is that? You know, like I got respected in my leaving.
Or maybe you give the players the win. You get him out of the dungeon, but he suffers a terrible wound that's permanent that he has to live with the rest of his life. That's a way to get rid of the character, meaning he can no longer adventure with you. But he's now nursing that wound, or maybe he's going through a level of physical therapy or something to come back.
Yeah, he goes through physical therapy. He comes back with a mysterious black arm that never misses its mark.
And then if you ever have that player come back, now you've got a story for him.
My character's even cooler than when I left him.
My character's cooler than when I left him, and you've got some stuff now to make plot devices. Did he get touched by the darkness?
Did he go to see a dark wizard to get back his bow arm? Who knows? And it just makes more story. It makes more story for you. Maybe
affix the cursed item to the man.
Yeah, there we go. It's this wonderful opportunity to create more story out of something that is just many people, and it's very sad. Many people just go, they're gone, or they're like, he died, and it's just unceremonious dropping of the bag. Remember, we are on the stage. All right, you essentially by puffing them out of existence or just murking them outright without any sort of respect is essentially taking that cane and just pulling the guy off the stage using the cane.
It's the cane pulling you off the stage,
of the comedy show. Yeah, it's the shepherd's crook, and there's whoop. It's tacky. I don't want to do that during a Shakespeare play. If I see that during a Shakespeare play, I'm going to be like, what the hell was that? What the hell? I'm going to want my money back, but when you have somebody dying on stage and it brings almost a tear to my freaking eye, I'm going to come see that story again.
Yeah, look at these things as opportunities. When a player joins and when a player leaves your table, those should be opportunities for moments in your game. We talked about the moments. We talked about making things special in your game. So when you do that, again, we started off where we said, if your players enjoy X, Y, Z, do this. And then Jared's been saying in the last couple episodes here, no, this is the Level Up Your Gaming podcast.
Yeah.
Level it up. Find a way to make their leaving meaningful, or more meaningful than, poof, gone.
It's so tacky. I hate it. Ugh. But, it is really that opportunity to really up your level of storytelling and really show your stuff. And trust me, your players will wow. If you've been doing the puff for years, I've seen it. Oh, he didn't show up this week. He puffed out of the scene. That is an intriguing podcast. That's a podcast we need to do. What happens when you're in the middle of a combat and somebody's like, I can't make it next week? There's a podcast we need to do.
Again, that's where you end up in these situations where, do you play him as the NPC? What do you do with him?
These are questions that need answering.
One of the topic that we'll probably end up doing is, when a player can't make it the week after. Again, you sort of have to design a game around how to do that. That's the preview to that podcast. You need to make sure that you have an out for players.
Always make sure that you have the escape route for players. Like, honestly, I always do. And it's something we'll talk about on a later podcast.
But Gary, I hope that answered the question for you. Jared, do you have any other points you want to add to this?
No, just remember, respect, meaningful moments, and boom. And then try to focus towards life rather than death. And trust me, this will level up. And your players, if you're experiencing this a lot, Gary, this is for you. If your players are experiencing this a lot and they see that respect, you're gonna turn some heads. You're gonna get some attention. They're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this guy actually respected that. He showed up for 2 sessions and he gave him a dirge on a rainy day. How awesome is that?
Be pretty awesome.
Pretty awesome.
But anyways, we're going to go ahead and wrap up here for today. Again, if you want to have your questions answered, you have an episode topic that you'd like to send to us, or you want to comment on one of the episodes, like, hey, this is how I like to do things. We're happy to share that feedback throughout the episodes that we do. So you can get us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com, or follow us on facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. Also, please subscribe, review, tell a friend, give it to your players. This is actually probably a good one to give to your players because, again, I have a call to action for your players in this one.
You do.
But we're also on YouTube. So, Jared,
smash that like button. Just smash it. Smash it.
Thank you. And
I don't know why I love that term. Smash that like button.
Well, it's not something that you enjoy, and that's what we're doing now. So, but anyways, guys, for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week.
Have a great week, everyone.